The planet Violia hung like a green jewel in the black stretch of the Zarath sector, its mountains and forests untouched by the galaxy's constant wars. But peace was a fragile thing. For centuries, the Zarath Empire had ruled the surrounding systems with iron logic, believing themselves the ultimate intelligence in the galaxy. To them, humanity was insignificant, a primitive species, clumsy, emotional, and entirely predictable. Kale had never wanted to be a hero. He had grown up on the edges of Violia, a small village nestled in the foothills, learning about machines and engines rather than politics or wars. He loved the quiet life, the smell of the forests, and the rhythm of repairing broken things for people who trusted him. But life, as it often did, had other plans. When the first Zarath fleets appeared in the orbit of Violia, Kale's village was among the first to feel the sting. Metallic shadows stretched across the sky as dropships descended, disgorging soldiers in sleek armor, each movement precise and deadly. Panic spread like wildfire. Families ran, hiding in caves or in the thick forests, but the Zarath were not fooled. They had advanced scanning technology, able to see through the densest foliage. Kale knew that running would only delay the inevitable. He remembered the stories his father used to tell him, stories of humans standing up when everything else failed. His hands clenched around the tools he had at home, nothing more than hammers, wrenches, and scraps of metal. But he knew the terrain. He knew the old industrial towers left from Violia's long-abandoned mines. And most of all, he knew one thing about the Zarath. They expected humans to panic. Kale's plan was simple in its own reckless way. He would lead a small group of villagers to one of the tallest towers, use its height and structure to trap the enemy, and force them into a fight they did not expect. There was no guarantee of survival, but Kale did not have time to wait for certainty. The villagers followed him reluctantly. Among them was Mara, a childhood friend who had always looked up to him, and Joran, a young boy no older than 15, terrified but clinging to Kale's resolve. They moved silently through the forests, shadows among shadows, with the roar of dropships and the clatter of alien soldiers echoing in the distance. Kale's mind worked faster than ever, calculating angles, considering structural weaknesses, and imagining the paths the Zarath might take. When they reached the old industrial tower, Kale wasted no time. He shouted instructions, and the villagers worked under his guidance. They rigged loose cables to act as tripwires, shifted metal panels to create barriers, and set up a precarious system of pulleys that could topple debris onto anyone pursuing them. Kale moved with the fluidity of someone who had always believed in human improvisation. The Zarath might have superior strength and technology, but they could not anticipate the ingenuity born of desperation. It did not take long before the first scouts arrived. They were fast, their movements almost too precise for a human eye, but Kale had predicted this. As the first soldier stepped onto a metal platform, a pulley snapped into action. A crate fell, clanging violently, sending the Zarath staggering back. Another tripped over a wire, crashing into a wall. Kale's heart pounded, not out of fear, but excitement. He felt alive in a way he never had before, realizing that humans could be unpredictable in ways the Zarath could not imagine. The fight escalated quickly. Kale darted from one side to another, leading the villagers in small, calculated strikes. Mara used slings and rocks, aiming at weak joints in the enemy armor, while Joran, trembling, rolled barrels that sent enemy soldiers tumbling. Kale's mind raced with every move. He was not fighting just for survival. He was fighting to prove something, to himself, to the universe, and maybe even to the humans who had always doubted themselves. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to creep in. The Zarath were relentless, adapting quickly to every trap, but Kale's strategies kept them at bay. At a critical moment, a group of soldiers broke through one of the barricades. Kale's instincts kicked in. He grabbed a heavy pipe and swung with all his might, sending one soldier crashing through a wall. Others hesitated, momentarily stunned by the ferocity of a human who refused to yield. It was then that Elira arrived. Hidden from the Zarath since birth, she had been moving through secret passages of the planet, witnessing the destruction and gathering intelligence. She had seen countless humans flee or surrender, but not Kale. He stood tall, guiding villagers, facing enemies, and turning their fear into strategy. For the first time in her life, Elira felt a surge of admiration. Here was someone who embodied what humans could be at their best: defiant, clever, unyielding. Elira approached cautiously, her presence unnoticed by the fray. Kale, preoccupied with the fight, did not notice her until a Zarath soldier aimed directly at her from above. Without thinking, Kale leapt, knocking her out of the line of fire and confronting the soldier in a tense struggle. It was raw, chaotic, and perfectly human. Kale's body moved in ways the Zarath did not anticipate. He used balance, timing, and sheer unpredictability to overcome the enemy. After the fight, Elira finally spoke, her voice clear and strong. "Human, you are unlike any I have seen. You fight not because you are ordered to, but because you will not bend. You will lead if you choose to. And I will stand with you." She declared not to the villagers, but to herself and the universe, that this human, this defiant, unshakable human, was someone she could trust with her life. And perhaps one day more than that. In the days that followed, Kale and Elira moved through the forests, organizing the villagers and other survivors into a coordinated resistance. Kale taught them how to use the terrain, how to improvise weapons, and how to anticipate the Zarath's moves. His ingenuity inspired others. Even the most fearful villagers began to believe that they could fight, that humans were capable of rising above what the universe expected of them. Kale's strategies became legendary in whispered tales among the survivors. He would use decoys to lure Zarath patrols into traps, engineer distractions with noise and fire, and create hideouts in places the enemy could never imagine. Mara became his second-in-command, coordinating logistics and morale, while Joran grew into a skilled scout, learning to observe and report with precision. One evening, as they rested in a hidden valley, Elira approached Kale. The sky above was painted with alien constellations, light years away from their familiar stars, yet somehow familiar in their beauty. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly. "The humans I knew were clever, yes, but you are different. You inspire hope where there was none. And when others doubt us, we prove them wrong." He had never sought recognition, yet here it was, not for power, not for fame, but for the sheer defiance of standing when others would fall. The weight of Elira's words settled in his heart. He realized that what he was building went beyond survival. It was the beginning of something larger. Humans, underestimated and dismissed, had a chance to shine, and he would be the first to show the galaxy their true strength. The days turned into weeks. Kale trained the villagers, honing their skills, strengthening their resolve. The Zarath attacks became more frequent, more calculated, but Kale was always a step ahead. Each battle, each trap, each small victory reinforced a simple truth: the humans would not yield. One fateful night, scouts reported a massive Zarath fleet approaching. It was the largest force Kale had ever faced. Many villagers trembled, fearing the end, but Kale stood before them, calm and unshakable. "They may have numbers and they may have technology," he said. "But we have what they cannot predict. We have courage, we have ingenuity, and we have each other. Tonight, we show them what humans can do." The Zarath would find no easy victories here. As the fleet entered orbit, the first wave descended. Kale's heart pounded, but his mind was sharp. He signaled, and the traps sprung, decoys lured, and ambushes struck with precision. The Zarath, confident in their superiority, faltered at every turn. Kale's defiance became a symbol, a spark of human ingenuity lighting the darkness. Hours passed in relentless combat. Kale fought alongside the villagers, each move a testament to human resilience. The Zarath forces began to retreat, overwhelmed by unpredictability and strategy. And through it all, Kale never wavered, never feared, never yielded. By dawn, the battlefield was quiet. The villagers cheered, exhausted but victorious. Kale stood atop the highest tower, looking out at the wreckage and the survivors. He felt a deep, unshakable pride, not just for himself, but for humanity. For the first time, the galaxy had seen what humans could do when they refused to bow. Elira approached him, her expression a mix of relief, admiration, and something deeper. She took his hand and whispered, "You are the human who stood defiant, and you are mine." As the sun rose over Vyrlia, Kale felt the promise of what humanity could achieve. They had been underestimated, dismissed, and ignored, but no longer. The human had stood defiant, and the galaxy would remember. The victory on Vyrlia had given the humans hope, but it was only a beginning. Kale knew the Zarath Empire would not forget the defiance of a single human, nor would they forgive it. Their intelligence networks were vast and their fleets unmatched. Every small victory was a spark, but one spark could ignite a fire or draw the attention of forces far stronger than any Kale had faced. Elira moved confidently among the villagers and resistance fighters. The people looked to her with hope, but they also looked to Kale. He had become more than a leader, he had become a symbol. The way he fought, the way he inspired others, the way he refused to yield, it was proof that humanity, underestimated for centuries, could stand against anything. Kale spent the days following the battle training the villagers and survivors. They had learned the basics of defense, but now it was time to move beyond survival. Kale taught them how to think like strategists, to anticipate the moves of enemies who believed themselves superior. Improvised weapons became sophisticated tools. Traps became complex systems designed to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. The humans were learning, adapting, and evolving faster than the Zarath could predict. Elira watched him work, her admiration growing with every passing day. She had known humans could be clever, but Kale's ingenuity went beyond expectations. He did not rely solely on technology. He relied on instinct, intuition, and the ability to see possibilities others could not. It was a quality that the Zarath could not measure and would never anticipate. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains of Vierlia, Kale and Elira surveyed the horizon. The remnants of the Zarath fleet lingered in the distance, a reminder that their enemy had not gone. "They will come again," Kale said quietly. "And next time they will bring more. We need to be ready, Elira. They think they can crush us, but they have no idea what humans are capable of." It was a bond forged not in comfort, but in survival. The Zarath did return. Months after their first defeat, a massive fleet descended upon Vierlia, far larger than anything Kale had faced before. The humans were ready, and Kale's preparations had transformed the planet into a fortress. The forests were riddled with hidden observation points. The valleys were lined with traps and barriers. Every abandoned building, every industrial ruin had been repurposed to serve as a strategic advantage. When the first Zarath dropships pierced the atmosphere, Kale led the charge. He did not simply defend, he attacked in ways the enemy did not expect. Guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and deception became his weapons. Zarath soldiers, confident in their technology and numbers, found themselves trapped, surrounded, and outmaneuvered. Kale moved through the battlefield with uncanny precision. He guided squads of humans, coordinated distractions, and personally confronted enemy leaders when necessary. He used the environment to his advantage, collapsing structures, igniting fuel stores, and redirecting enemy forces into carefully planned zones of vulnerability. Every action was calculated, yet seemed spontaneous, unpredictable, and entirely human. Elira fought at his side, skilled and fearless. Her presence inspired the fighters, and her strategic mind complemented Kale's instinctive brilliance. Together, they became a force no one could easily counter. Humans who had once feared for their lives now moved with purpose, confidence, and determination. Kale's defiance had become a rallying cry. During a particularly fierce confrontation, Kale found himself face-to-face with the Zarath general, a towering figure known for crushing rebellions before they began. The general's armor gleamed in the firelight, his movements precise and deadly. But Kale did not hesitate. He had studied the enemy, observed every weakness, and trusted in human intuition. The battle was brutal. Kale dodged blasts, rolled under attacks, and used the terrain to turn the fight to his favor. Rocks, debris, and machinery became extensions of his strategy. With a final, decisive move, Kale disabled the general's armor and forced him to retreat. It was a human victory not of brute strength, but of ingenuity, courage, and unyielding resolve. The Zarath forces faltered after losing their leader. Confusion spread through their ranks, and the humans seized the opportunity. Every ambush, every trap, every clever maneuver Kale had prepared came together in a symphony of resistance. By the time the sun rose, the battlefield was theirs. The Zarath were defeated, humiliated, and forced to retreat into the depths of space. Victory was not without cost. Many humans had fallen, and the landscape bore scars from the battles, but Kale and Elira stood together, looking over their people. Exhaustion was written on every face, but so was pride. They had survived against impossible odds, proving that humanity was not to be underestimated. Elira turned to Kale, her expression filled with awe. "You did this. You led them. You showed everyone that humans are not weak. They cannot predict us. They cannot break us. That is why I declare you mine. Not as a ruler, not as a soldier, but as the human who will always stand by my side." Elira's declaration was more than a personal bond. It was a symbol of trust, respect, and the unity between humans and those who believed in them. The following weeks were a time of rebuilding. Kale and Elira worked to fortify Vierlia, training the survivors to defend themselves and establishing networks of intelligence to anticipate future threats. Kale's strategies became more refined, his insights sharper, and the humans under his guidance grew into a formidable force. They were no longer merely survivors, they were a people ready to face the galaxy. News of their victory spread to nearby systems. Humans on other planets, long oppressed or underestimated, began to rise. Stories of Kale's defiance, his ingenuity, and his victories inspired hope across the stars. It became clear that the galaxy had underestimated humanity for far too long. One night, Kale stood with Elira on a high cliff, overlooking the forests and valleys of Vierlia. The sky was filled with stars, distant suns shining like tiny beacons of possibility. "They will return," Kale said, his voice steady. "The Zarath will not forget this defeat, but we will be ready. Humans will always be ready." Not just as a leader, but as the human who showed the galaxy that defiance is strength, that courage is power, and that humanity cannot be measured by their expectations. Let the galaxy see what humans can do when they refuse to bend, when they refuse to yield, when they stand together. They were a force to be reckoned with, clever, adaptable, and fearless. Elira remained at Kale's side through every challenge, every battle, every decision. Together, they became more than leaders. They became symbols. Symbols of hope, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The bond between them was unspoken yet undeniable, built through shared trials and mutual respect. As the sun rose over Vierlia on a new day, Kale looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of the past battles and the promise of future victories. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, and even mocked. But now they were standing tall, unbroken, and ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at them. Elira stood beside him, her hand finding his. "You have shown them, Kale. You have shown everyone that humans are unstoppable when they refuse to give in. You are mine, and together we will face the stars." And as long as he and Elira stood together, nothing could break the spirit that had risen from the forests of Vierlia to challenge the galaxy. The stars stretched endlessly above them, a vast canvas of possibilities. Kale felt the promise of the future in every glimmer. Humans had stood defiant, and the galaxy had taken notice. They would face the universe with courage, ingenuity, and unshakable resolve. And through it all, Kale and Elira would stand together, a testament to what humanity could achieve when it refused to bow. The human spirit, unpredictable and resilient, had not only survived, it had triumphed. And this triumph was only the beginning.